It was always a delight to have Christina here and learn from her. She's had a very impressive career. She worked at LinkedIn, Zynga, MySpace, and Yahoo. She was a founder of Boxes and Arrows. She's an awesome writer. Eleganthack.com is where you can see her writings online. And she's written these books, right? Information Architecture from back in the day, Pencil Me In, and Radical Focus on OKRs. And now she's a professor at Stanford. So she's an excellent teacher. So we're very fortunate to have her today. She's almost done with her new book, working title, Continuous Feedback. And so she's begun sharing some advice from that on how to influence without authority, which is near and dear to product people because no one reports to us. So let's give Christina a warm welcome, please. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, I think I'm going to abuse your generosity. That's a good way to start it off. So I actually am torn between two titles. One is Continuous Feedback, and the other one is The Team That Managed Itself. It's a business fable like Radical Focus or like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And so I'm going to ask you to vote. I'm going to ask first A, Continuous Feedback, or B, The Team That Managed Itself. Are we ready? Vote with your hand. Do you want A, Continuous Feedback? Oh, okay. B, The Team That Managed Itself. Okay, I'm going to have to start listening to my marketing person. Just went to sleep again, little booger. Okay, here we go. Are we up and going?
Go to PowerPoint. And then...
Yeah. It's nice to have a touchscreen. You should try it sometime.
Yeah.
I always like to tease Mac people because I'm so proud of my Surface. It's the first time I get to make Mac people jealous. So fun. Okay, so anybody from Microsoft? Yes. We'll talk about Windows, but Surface is awesome. So it's an interesting topic, and this is actually from a couple of different sources. Some is from the book, and some is a topic I've been giving for a while. Now, I want to warn you folks, you're going to have to talk to each other in this. I know it's a little traumatic, and you'll have to listen to each other. It might get a little touchy-feely at some point. So, pretend you're at the GSB's touchy-feely class, interpersonal dynamics, and we're going to go for it. So, I'm always asking myself this question. I'm sure you are as well. I don't know, hey, what's going on? Where are the flying cars? That's another question that haunts me an awful lot. I've been promised flying cars. Where's my seat at the table? I have to admit that I might actually get a seat at this particular table. It's a pretty awesome table. But we're always asking ourselves, like, who gets to decide what good enough is? Who gets to decide what gets launched? Who gets to decide what features go in the product? And the problem is, as Dan pointed out, if you're a product manager, you don't have anybody reporting to you. But guess what? That is a misleading piece of information. So when I was a designer, I thought, if I only get in management, people will do what I tell them to. And yeah, exactly. And when I became a manager, I thought, okay, now people are going to do what I tell them to. Not even the people who reported me. They usually told me what to do. And then I thought, well, if I was a product manager, I could decide what goes in the product. No. And then I became a general manager. No. But from general manager, I could see high enough that I realized even the CEOs can barely get their people to do what they want. And the board are yelling at them. Like, just having power is ridiculously unhelpful. It's very confusing, right? So considering that, we have to find another way forward because we still have to get things done, right? So what are we going to do? And we get a lot of the usual advice, right? Mesmerize them. Cialdini style influence. Or how about do judo? I've heard that from my bosses so many times. Like, they want that, and they trick them into wanting that. And, of course, if we could only speak the language of business, if we could change how we look and feel, maybe we could pass. And to be honest, all of these don't really work either. It's all very problematic. So I want to say that all we have to do is stop thinking of this as something we have to mesmerize or change who we are. I want us to start thinking about this as a product design problem. And product design is what we all do. UX people, engineers, everybody is figuring out how to make something people want. Now, if we spend so much time figuring out what people want, what's wrong with us, right? We just have to change our point of view a little bit. So I came up with this very simple model about how to get influence one-on-one, and we're also going to talk a little bit about team influence, because my new book is mostly about teams. You might have got it from the team name. So one of the first things you really have to know is your value. You have to feel valued. You have to feel strong. You want to be negotiating it from a position of knowing what you're all about, and that's really important. You also need to know your needs. One of my favorite, so I have a couple of students from my Creative Founder course that I used to teach at CCA. Yes, and there's always this assignment they get that freaks them out, which is figure out your personal run rate. And for the first time ever, they have to figure out how much does it really cost me to be alive, right? How much do I spend on food? How much do I spend? And it's funny because especially once we're a little bit later on and we have good salaries, we stop paying attention to that. But if you're trying to decide, do I want to change jobs? Do I want to have an ultimatum with my boss? If I want to walk away, you got to know if you can. And knowing what you actually need is really important. And I think it's important to track your bottom run rate regularly so that you can make a decision about where is the money going. Also, sometimes the money wanders off if you don't watch it, so I recommend it. As well as that, it's really important to know what keeps you running. So is it joy? Is it connecting with other people? Is it solving problems? Is it that new car? Like, what is really keeping you running? What do you need praise? Are you in a place where there's no praise and you need praise? And then what do you want? Do you want recognition? Do you need prizes? Everybody has their own thing that they need and or want. So when I talk to folks, especially students and also startups, I say, what are you optimizing for in your life? So often we think about we're optimizing for money, right? Oh, yeah, I want a bigger salary. I want a bigger salary. Or maybe you want a bigger title. It can be exhausting. We go to these startups and these meetups. Sorry, Dan. We go to these meetups, and what do people say? Oh, where do you work? What do you do? Oh, are you a product manager at Facebook? Ooh, you might be interesting and worth talking to. Are you some goofy guy trying to fix schools? We have no time for you, you know. Aw, he has passion. He's like, ha, 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 no. So, you know, do you really want that? That is a title. Titles are worth money that you can trade them in. They're actually valuable. I've had some really great titles at really good companies, and they've helped me do other things that have no title and no money. Wait a second. I think I'm doing it wrong. But do you want influence? Like, one of the number one reasons I decided to start teaching at Stanford was because in the computer science department, not the D school, teaching engineers about how to make things more humane is because I'm scared. And I really want to help engineers make things more humane. And if I went over to the D school, it'd be like all loves and kisses and Post-it notes because we're all designers there. But instead, I want influence. I want the next generation of products to become better. It matters to me. So I chose that. For many years, I optimized for learning. So I had to choose between Google and Yahoo, and following the famous rule of my life, never go with the most money. I chose Yahoo because they were building a search capacity at that moment. They didn't have a search engine. And when I joined them, they were actually building that, and I got to see how it worked, and I got to learn a ton of things. It was an amazing moment in my life. So I'm not a millionaire, but I know a lot about indexing, and I'm very happy about it. The last thing, this is what I usually optimize my life for now, is optimize for joy. I always remember watching Swimming to Cambodia by Spalding Gray. It's a really wonderful movie. And he talks about this Thai concept, Sanuk. And he says Sanuk is happy, pleasurable, joy. And if there's any Thai here, we can correct Spalding's point of view. But if it's not Sanuk, they won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to live a life where if something doesn't give me joy, I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. That sounds like a really good rule. So I've been optimizing for joy. But your optimization will change at different phases of your life. You just might not be a place where joy is something you choose. I'm sorry. When I sit down in a new company, the first thing I do is I have coffee or lunch with every single person that I can. And I really mean every person I can, and this will take a very long time because I think a bunch of you are in 1,000 person companies, right? So start in the middle and work your way out. But ask them, what's a really good day and what's a really bad day? This is also a great interview question, when you're trying to figure out if a job is a good fit for you. What does a really good day look like and what is a bad day? And you'll find so much you can unpack there. Like if somebody talks about a terrible day where this metric goes wrong and this goes wrong, you start to understand their life is run on metrics. Or if they talk about fighting, you understand that their job is very social. And these are really, really, really important questions to ask. You want to understand what makes other people tick. I'm losing my voice a little bit. So when you go and have this lunch or coffee with your coworkers, with your boss, with whoever, you are really just asking them to tell stories, but inside you're asking, what does success look like for this person? How can I help them be successful? I used to bluntly tell my boss, Jeff Weiner, is to say, I want to make you incredibly successful so you get promoted so I can have your job. And it works. It's like, well, that's a little in your face, Christina, but as long as I get promoted out of it, I suppose. This was back at Yahoo. When he was a CEO, I don't think I could get his job. But there's something there in if you can make somebody else successful. The other thing we just did is we were showing some empathy for the coworkers. And what always amazes me, especially with designers, and I get to beat up on designers because I've been a designer for most of my life, they have empathy for the customer, they have empathy for the user. Do they have empathy for the product manager? Not as much as perhaps they should. Okay, that one does and that one does, but the rest of them, come on. Empathy should be 360. Like, let's feel for these people. Let's help them, because that's how we do it. And if you want to be super transactional about it, we could talk about reciprocity and how we do favors for people and they do favors for us. But in reality, I like to think that you can just be lovely and empathic and caring, and you will get rewarded. If it's not working for you, maybe, well, that's another story. If just being lovely is not working for you, you might ask yourself, am I being effective in it? Am I really listening to that person? Am I really understanding them? Am I really doing that work? And if it still isn't working, they might be a sociopath. That's always an option, people. They're everywhere. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about teams, right? So the problem with teams, yes, which one is you? So in order to learn students' names, I would draw the students in my class. My classes are getting a little big for it, but one of my students recognizes herself, and that's you. Yeah. So, oops. But what I love about it is, like, people are so different, right? And that's something we forget about a lot in our teams. So Erin Meyer wrote this wonderful book called Culture Map. If you can ever get her here, please do, because she's amazing. And the Culture Map is a really fascinating book, and it talks about how different countries have different cultures around certain topics. So we have communicating. Some people are high context, some people are low context. And so I know you're all taking pictures of it. So when we're talking about countries, about high context and low context, my favorite people in the world are Dutch people and Israelis, because they are so low context. They're like, no, I'm not getting that to you on Monday. That's just not happening. Then there's the other end where people are very high context. And I spend a lot of time in Central America, and I find the folks there are not going to tell you, no, your dock is not going to be built in time. It's just like, well, there's, hurricane season's coming up, and I have to interpret from that the dock is going to be late. So that's what the higher context is we are supposed to share enough background to understand each other. But when she talks about this being true for countries, I noticed it's true for companies. So when I worked at Yahoo, it was very passive aggressive. Like, if you wanted to get anything done, and this was 2000, so I can talk crap. Back then, I had to meet with every single person individually who might be able to stop my product, which was almost everybody, and make sure they were on board. Like, you had to get everybody pointing in the same direction. Then I went to Zynga, and Zynga was not passive aggressive. Zynga was aggressive aggressive. So it's like, yeah, when you fuck up, I'm going to have your job. So, good luck with that. I mean, it was so in your face. I've never been anywhere like that. And after a while, I adjusted. But the thing is, everybody in this room has worked at, how many people have worked at 2 companies before you got here? Raise your hand. 3 companies? 4 companies? 5 companies? Yeah, you got a lot of context switching, right? So you've gone from passive-aggressive to I don't even know. Are people talking? It's really, really hard. But when you go into these conversations, you think your way is the normal way. And so we have all these points of conflicts, like, is it hierarchical or is it egalitarian? In other words, does the boss make the final call, or is it everybody has to get consensus? We have deciding, is it going to be the top down or is it going to be consensual? And one of the things I found interesting in the book is they said, even though both Japanese culture and Chinese culture is very consensual, in China, the boss makes a decision, and Japan, they come to the decision together. Now, you can disagree, of course, but that's from Aaron Meyer's book. Negative feedback. Do you want to be all Israeli and just go, no. I want to tell you about what that outfit you're wearing, although we both look fabulous, so we're fine. And then, or you're like, or are you going to make a shit sandwich, right? Sorry. You know when you say something nice and something bad and something nice? By the way, those don't work. There's a lot of science on it. Google it. Do not build the shit sandwich. Yeah, or you have to use like 10 times as much bread, apparently. You have to give like 10 compliments for every insult. Shit burrito. Yeah, see, Dan's going to be making a lot of money off the shit burrito soon. And have fun editing that part out. Okay. And confrontational, disagreeing, or non-confrontational, right? So you're either in your face or you're not. And then we have the low context, high context, concept first, application first. This is actually really interestingly difficult to deal with at Stanford because some people can't understand anything till they have an example, while other people are like, sure, that's just a one-off. What's the theory? Has it been proven? Right? Okay, I say you work with them. We have trusting. This one's also really interestingly subtle. So task-based is Dan invites me here, I talk, that's fine. We don't have to be friends. He saw my video, it's perfectly good. He got some references. Relationship-based is when Dan says, hey, let's go out for drinks. He talks to me. He gets a sense of who I am as a human, and then he invites me to speak. I don't remember which one we did, but we both drink and speak, so we're fine. But it's really interesting. There are places where you cannot do business unless you've had a lot of cups of tea or a lot of glasses of wine, what have you. And then finally, linear time and flexible time. So when I spent a lot of time down in Belize on Key Cocker, and we always talk island time. And island time, of course, is anywhere from exactly on time to 30 minutes after. Like, it's really flexible. But then you go to Germany, and if you're meeting at 5:52, you're meeting at 5:52. That's just, it's understood. I had a friend who used to say, when you're late, you are telling me that your time is more important than my time. And she was linear time. It was like, if you're being late, it's an insult. So we have all these assumptions, right? We think, oh, of course, they're going to be just like me, but they aren't. And the problem is that when we assume, I love this quote, so I'm going to actually read it. The problem is we tend to assume that our framing represents the truth, rather than merely presenting a subjective math. In truth, every frame offers its own image of reality. And I will say teaming is good, but The Fearless Organization is the book I wish teaming was. Amy Edmondson's The Fearless Organization. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Dan, tweet that. Fearless Organization. It's so good. Okay. I love it. So what we want to do is we don't want to default into norms. And a lot of times we have fights. Like I've heard my students and I've heard people I advise saying, that person doesn't care. They're always late. Well, are they always late because they don't care? Or do they just come from a place where being on time is not valued? We don't know. And we start to think about intent. Like, why are they messing with me? Boy, she must really hate me because she just told me that I need a pedicure, when the reality is I do desperately. So, so it's very easy to misread what people are saying. So we don't want to default into the norms. We don't want to go into a meeting and immediately assume everybody's running from the same rules as we are, because we're not. No, so Who's ready to share a cool rule? Let's share some rules. There's one way in the corner.
All right, catch.
Don't hurt the audience.
Mic thrower.
They haven't filled out the survey yet.
There you go.
I think a great rule from my team would be to have an etiquette for meetings. Some meetings are pointless. Some meetings go on endlessly. So, restrict the amount of people in the meetings, have an agenda, and have action items.
I love that. So when you said have an etiquette, stopping is a bad idea, but I love that you said we want an agenda, we want action items. What was the other one? Close enough. but you thought it through, so that's really great. So it's very concrete. It's something we can all do. Another one? There's one in the back. Oh, we got one here, and then the lady in red.
Ours was a big one was accountability. So you're not throwing somebody under the bus, and you're not having one throat to choke.
Wow. So here's a question. What does accountability look like?
accountability looks like you're taking responsibility for your piece and making sure you follow through with that.
Yeah, and for that we need people to have, everything has to have an owner, so somebody's accountable. It's really interesting, like you can't just say it and assume everybody knows, because we talked about the norms. Unpacking accountability. So what does that mean? How are we going to do it? What are the prerequisites? That's really important
Yeah,
too.
we talked about the trust. We talked about learning from each other.
Absolutely.
Transparency.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's awesome. So that's one of the things you have to do. Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things you really have to do is make sure we all know what it looks like.
So our team talked a lot about a sense of trust, which is very important, and also kind of friendliness across the team. And the agreements that I suggested were a little bit inspired by the book, The Four Agreements. I don't know if people know it here. It's a tiny, tiny book. But
Yay.
basically, the first one is choosing our words carefully. So say what you mean and mean what you say. And then the second one is do not make assumptions. So clarify. And then the third.
I'm gonna stop you for a second so we can unpack this a little bit, because I think there's a lot here.
Yeah.
So the very first one was do what you say and say what you mean.
Yeah. So clarifying, choosing the words carefully. So basically,
that's
when you were saying about like high context.
Yeah. So I want to just take that one and say, okay, so we're talking about choosing your words carefully. So how do we know when somebody's not choosing their word carefully? And how are we going to hold somebody accountable to that? So speaking of accountability, so I might say, my Stanford students have been doing something. They're always teaching me weird things. Like this one is called ouch and oops. Who uses ouch and oops? Anyone? Yay, it's awesome. So let's say Dan's like, yeah, blah, 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 because he's all too much coffee. I don't know. And I'm like, ouch, Dan, you just insulted my talk accidentally. And he would say, oops, because he's like, oh, I didn't mean to at all. So it's a way of saying, hey, I don't think the words are quite clear. He can respond, oops, I'm sorry. And then he can say, what I really meant to say was this. Let me unpack what I was saying. If you don't have a way to react to these rules, the rules are empty posters. Not saying Intuit doesn't live by this. I'm just saying posters are one thing, action items are another. So I think being able to know. So
having a universal language, what you described.
Exactly. And we have to agree, what are we going to do? Like, let's say if somebody's running on and on and on, and we all agree that we want to hear many voices. We could make up a rule, which is when somebody's been talking a lot, we can say share the space or something. You have to make up rules, because otherwise we all believe in these things, but they're too mushy, they're too gooey, and they're not very actionable. So what's important is not just to make the norms, but make the norms something you can do something about. Should we have one more over here? You had so much. I'm sorry, I'm going to hold you down to one. Oh yes, our enthusiastic person. Yay!
So we discussed about having a sense of belonging within a team. And I think
talk about mushy. I love it.
And one of the things that has helped is, when you know that your team has your back, just not your reporting manager having your back, but your team having your back. Let me give you a simple example. In our team, the team that I work for, we have a policy where if anyone is on vacation, we don't bug them with emails. We don't trouble them with any work, no SMSs. We wait for them to come back. And until then, we go and figure. And while you feel it probably is really very hard to figure out somebody's areas of responsibility, actually it is not. It's just the will. The other example is, if you're a leader, you can have, your teams come up with obstacles. If you can figure innovative ways of removing obstacles, or at least helping them figure how to remove those obstacles, they start telling you that, hey, you actually have my back.
And that's another thing is like, what happens if somebody feels you don't have my back? Can I say, I'm not feeling safe? Can I say, I really need your help? Like, you're coming up with some language so that we all know what's going on. You're booking him later for another talk, right? And he's hiring. Look, beautiful company. I'm joking. Maybe you are hiring. It sounds like a great place to work.
We are hiring.
Yeah. See, look, heaven right over there. So, but I will say, like, again, like you hear these things, and we all do these in these meetings, and then what, right? What? So when you do this norm exercise, and please do try this at home, it's not dangerous, or at the workplace, but I would really like you to make sure that first you clarify, what do you mean? Give me an example, make it really concrete, and then ask the question, what are we going to do when this norm is violated? How can we react? And try to find it easy, lightweight. There's companies where you can just do it straight in somebody's face and say, you've been talking for too long, so you can shut up now. Yes, they exist. And then there's other yes, I survived it. And then there's other companies where it's like, Jill looks really like she has something to say. I'd really love to hear her, So you have to come up with a plan. Okay, we have a few more things I'm going to cover, and I'm going to talk for a little bit. So you have to know your environment. You have to know the map of the world you're in, right, in order to figure out how to traverse it. So the obvious one is business model. I will not tell you how often I'm shocked that people don't understand their company's business model, even the product managers. Designers often don't know the business model, not my students because I raise them up right, but often designers don't even know their own company's business model. So you really, really have to do it. And what I like to do is just do a business model map of your own company. Like we think of it as for doing it with competition, we think of it for inventing new ones. Why not apply it to your own company? Because that will allow you to make the company money. And if you can make the company money, you are valued. I hate to say it, it's a very capitalist thing. But also you can help make your boss successful, make your coworkers successful. So take the time to do it. You have to learn about group dynamics. Sometimes one team hates the other team for reasons that nobody understands, but there it is. Okay, you all understand it. So, there's wars, and you have to decide where you're going to build a bridge and when are you going to go the long way around, because there's different situations. So you have to take the time. I always love this map from Paula Scheer. She's a very famous graphic designer. She wrote a book called Make It Bigger. I know it's a little hard to see, but because she's a designer and that's what clients say. But she worked for CBS Records. You know that Boston album with the big spaceship? That's her, among other things. And this is how she got the approval process for CBS Records advertising. This is how many layers she had to go through to get that big old spaceship live. So she mapped it out. She took the time to try to figure out what are all the pieces, what do I have to navigate? And yeah, don't we all feel better about our job now? I look at that and go, oof, I should print that and put it on my office. So it's very complicated. Timing is really important. I hope you folks know. First of all, emotional timing. If you're going to talk to your boss, if you're going to talk to an engineer because you really need a favor, if you talk to a designer, you have to pick the right time. People cannot hear if they're experiencing any of these elements, if they have fear, they have pain, or if they have a prejudice. So obviously, like I don't know about you, but when I was at Yahoo, there were 2 months where we couldn't get anything done right after performance reviews because everybody was so traumatized. And it was just sad. And again, this is many years ago, so I get to tell stories. But when people are really feeling scared, it's really hard for them to listen to you. So first you have to sit and alleviate the fear. And that means you might have to have one of these little listening sessions we just did, right? Like if you're talking to somebody and they're just losing it because they're scared they're going to be laid off or something, you need to listen to them and assuage that fear first. You got to tame lines, right? This could be you. Pain, if they're in pain, and there's all kinds of different pain. They might have been laid off. They might have been demoted. They might have might even just have trouble at home. Like sometimes you walk up to somebody and they have the face and you're just like, do I go near them? Yes. You go near them. You go, you're looking like you're having a hard day. Can I help? You just put whatever you want aside, forget it. You're just going to listen to them. And you're going to say, can I help in any way? If you just want to listen, you want to go have a cup of tea or something? Don't give coffee to sad people, is my opinion, or scotch. The other one is going to be prejudice. So when you're working with a new team, perhaps you think of the designer or the engineer in this way. The engineer is the one on the right. Stereotypes are really hard. Like I have found that sometimes nobody will listen to your design opinions if you're an engineer, or nobody will listen to your business ones. And you have to prove the stereotype is not correct by listening a lot, saying smart things, and slowly building up the kind of trust you need. You can't just barge in and tell people. was actually trying to sort out a fight between an engineer who was trying to tell the designer the design process. It's like, you have to design this first, and then you can design the other thing. And I'm like, honey, that's just, no. In that case, he was just getting in her face. And sometimes we have to respect people's roles as well. So don't fall into the stereotype, but do respect the areas of expertise. And of course, there is a rhythm. There is a season to everything. Turn, turn, turn. There's a time for firing, and there's a time for promotions. There's a time for bonuses. Seriously, so if you know what the company's rhythm is, if you have an annual performance review, and first of all, I'm sorry, but think about it. You only have to be the world's best employee from November through December. So, be ready for the timing. Seriously, quarterly performance reviews, people, it's the right thing to do. But if you know the rhythm of when it's possible to get a raise and possible to get a promotion, you're not going to barge in the door and ask for the wrong thing. So have a sense. Don't come up with a brilliant idea. Okay, especially for designers, but it's for the product people too, and sometimes the engineers. Do not come up for a brilliant idea 2 days before we ship. Please stop that. I know it's brilliant, but it's too late. My friend Laura Klein says there's this thing called the 80-20 rule for critique, which is when you're 20% in, you can say that's a dumb idea. But when you're 80% in, you can say that's the wrong font. You see the difference? Make sure that your rhythm and your timing is appropriate to where people are in their cycle, or else they may kill you because they haven't slept for 3 weeks because they're trying to launch. So really understand where people are and meet them where they are. So this is my model. We want to know what the forces are. We want to know ourselves. We want to know the other person. We want to know where we stand. It's yes, I could have taught you the 10 things that Cialdini says that will influence people, and what happens is they all read the same damn book and they are going to hate you when they feel manipulated. Or you can try to be a kind, empathic, understanding person, and I think that has longer ROI, better lifetime value. So talk to people. I want to touch on body language real quick because I think you're all doing really well, but I was interviewing 2 coaches. Can you guess which one I actually hired? Seriously, this guy is a life coach, and he's sitting like this. Yeah, I work with a lot of people like you. Yeah, I'm good in tech. I was like, guy, just maybe get therapy or something. And the other one was open and gentle and easygoing, and I thought that was a better person to work with. And your body is always telling a story. We've all seen Amy Cuddy's talk, I hope. Get a little Wonder Woman on. I don't care if it's been disproved. I love standing like Wonder Woman. Linda Carter is my hero. But so when I first started at MySpace, I decided I'd run an experiment. I run a lot of experiments in my life. This is one of my favorite ones. So I'm hired as a VP of social at MySpace. Let's not laugh at that title too much. There was a VP of media. That was the other one. And I thought, I'm in Hollywood. I'm wearing heels. And I'm dressing like them, and I thought, I'm just going to use all the guy body language. Sitting in meetings like this. If the skirt was long enough. I really mimicked masculinity, and I was promoted, in 6 months. It happened so fast. And everybody's like, you should talk to Christina. She has a lot of authority. Why, yes. Yes, I do. I have a lot of authority. So just practicing, even if you don't feel confident, talk your body into being confident, and maybe the confidence will show up. And of course, you can also read people's body language, right? You can look at them and say, yeah, he's not in the mood to be asked for a raise right now, perhaps maybe later. But because of mirror neurons, you can actually write body language. If somebody's sitting like this, I would first start, let me get it right. Okay, I'd start like this, and then I'd be opening up. And she would very slowly start opening up. It's crazy. First, you mirror them, then you move them into the position which is healthier for a conversation. Okay, that's a little manipulative, but still, love, it's done with love, okay? Speak the language of the place, of course. I always tell people when you're salary negotiating, it's more about the package. Yeah, no, it's not about the salary, it's about the package. Or going to your boss, hey, let me know how you can get me to the next level. I'm interested in getting to the next level. That means please promote me, please tell me how. But it's a better language. So learning some of the language of your place is good. I like speaking need to need. I think in the Valley we get very transactional. It's sort of like, what can you do for me, and what can you do for me, and what am I going to do for you if you do this first? And I prefer collaborative. Like I said to Jeff, it doesn't sound so bad anymore. Like, I want to get you promoted so I can have your job. What is the win-win situation? What's the place where you're winning, I'm winning, you need a client, they need a solution. Let's work together to find that place instead of you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I'm tired of that, to be honest. So, know yourself, know the other, make it us. Drink a lot of coffee with people. So the last thing is, what if it doesn't work? Well, sometimes you got to go. There are bad situations. There are psychopaths. If acting like a truly good person, an understanding person, is getting you stepped on, got to go when you got to go. So that's my last little sad piece of advice, but I'll leave it on a highlight. I'm going to give you all homework. I would like you to make a sentence about your awesome. You just found out you had awesome. You can say, I'm an extraordinary teacher because I teach people how to teach themselves. I just made that up. I don't know if it's a good sentence, but it's beginning. Discover other people's awesome. Like, if you're super interested in everybody, you'll be interesting. Trust me. And plot something together. Help this guy make his startup win because he's fixing schools. God bless. Go talk to this fellow about this amazing culture he's building and how could it be better. Like, help each other be amazing. You'll never know. People that I met 5 years ago come up and do favors for me just because I did something 5 years ago that I completely forgot. Be kind, be open, be generous. And thank you. Questions?
All right, we got some mics here for questions. The way this works, just raise your hand. If you have a question, we'll give you a mic. If you don't have a mic, just wait till you get one. Here you
go. What about quiet people? And a lot of...
I love the introverts. I'm an introvert. I just fake it.
Yeah, there's just a lot of these, a lot of teams, they kind of settle into their roles. It's very comfortable not to have conflict, but you all have to get something done at work.
Yeah.
And how do you, if you want your colleagues to kind of branch out and get them, I mean, we're all obviously externally focused. We're here, on an evening, on the weekday at a meetup. So for all of us, for those who aren't these types of personalities, how do you get them into these types of conversations?
So that's been one of the things I've been working with a lot. So I have a very deep philosophy for both when I'm working with teams or working with students, which is every single voice matters. And the problems we have are so wicked, we cannot afford to lose a single voice, right? Why have a diverse team if only a couple people talk? That's sort of senseless. So I've been doing things like changing brainstorms. So for example, when you have a brainstorm, who's been in a brainstorm where it's like, okay, everybody, just shout out, no judgment, just shout out whatever you're thinking, I'll write it down, right? Have you been in one of these? Okay. Well, they've been disproved 8 ways to Sunday, right? They don't work in so many ways. But you know who shouts things out? I'm sorry, extroverted white men. That's who shouts things out, which means we're losing voices. So what I've replaced it with is an exercise that's free listing, which means writing one idea per Post-it completely silently for a little while. And I always tell people we do it for uncomfortably long because first you have to write down the obvious stuff, then you have to get stuck, then you can start having new ideas. And then you'll share it in a small group, and then we'll do a shout out if we're working in a large group. So getting a ton of people in a room to have a brainstorm and shouting out, you might as well just invite like the 5 people who like to shout instead. So if you really want to get all the voices, you have to start rethinking how these processes work so they make space for people. And also, if you have these norms, you can do check-ins. So when you create the norms, you want to check in your retros. Does everybody do retrospectives? Okay, who does retrospectives? Raise your hand. Okay, that's great. If you don't do it, start. End of the week and just say, what's something we should keep doing and what's something we can change? And what's really awesome is you could, during a retrospective, you could say, hey, I noticed the same people seem to talk. Anybody got something we'd try this week to get more ideas out? And somebody may have something really cool they learned, like the whole oops and ouch or the snapping, so you don't cover up people, but you can encourage them. Like, I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. That'd be neat. But I don't have all the answers, and you don't have all the answers, but the group might. So bringing them the problems in the retrospective, I noticed that only a few people speak. They'll come up with solutions. But you have to constantly be working at it. And yeah, they're afraid of conflict, but they might not be afraid of evolution. And if we can get them to just evolve, that might be better. Another question? Oh, there's one in the corner. Yay, mic runner. Thank you. I love having personal mic runners.
Thank you. So yeah, I have a question. How do you enable or empower the folks on your team to achieve their goals?
So start by giving them your respect. Ask them what their goals are. And then during your one-on-ones, check in and say, okay, what are we going to do this week to help meet your goals? The only way to empower people is to empower them. And I know that sounds like a tautology, probably because it is. But if you're true to your word, it will be empowering. And I will say that when I first get students, I'm going to talk about students a lot, because I swear they've been brainwashed by high school to shut up and sit still. And so it's really hard for me. I feel like I'm a deprogrammer in my classes where I have to get them to talk, to share their ideas, to do things. And so the norms are actually really powerful for that. I remember the first time I did it, it was probably with your class, and I remember somebody came up to me and said, this is the first time anybody's asked me what I want out of a class. And I was like, oh, wow. Nobody's asked any these folks what they want from their team. Nobody's asked what matters to them. And when you start asking people and then making rules and then actually living them, they'll be empowered. They'll believe you. But the only reason they'll believe you is if you actually do it. You have to have the follow through. Because if you say it and you don't have the follow through, that's trust you ain't getting back for a long time. So start by creating the norms of the team, then using the retrospectives to say, yes, these still matter. And with individuals, use your one-on-ones if they report into you to ask them, what goals are you aiming for? What are you going to do this week towards it? What are you going to do next week? And keep checking in. If you believe in them, they'll believe in you.
Any more questions?
Oh, there's one behind you.
Okay.
He's hiding
There you go.
sneakily.
Thanks so much, Christina, for the awesome talk. My name's Taylor.
Hi, Taylor.
I'm pretty new in a new company right now, and we have some diversity inclusion OKRs, and I'm seeing that there are some activities that are taken on pretty explicitly in order to achieve those, but I'm also seeing in the company that there's some gaps, and I'm just curious. I've been having like individual coffees with lots of people that are in the diversity and inclusion sort of group, and just trying to understand what their goals are. But I'm seeing that the problems exist more outside of the group, and so I'm just curious, like if you have advice on how to sort of influence around culture, diversity, inclusion in larger organizations in particular.
It's so hard. So I have a friend named Janet Crawford, and she does diversity inclusion training, and she ended up quitting for a couple of years because it turns out the training was making the bias worse. Because when people find out that it's something that exists in the company and that it's common, they actually feel more normal doing it, which is like the worst backlash ever I've heard. And she's been working on rethinking her approach. And I find that you are kind of lucky in that you are a tall white guy. And your superpower gets to be looking like people who may not be on board. And so you can have those kinds of conversations that might be weird with other folks of like, you know, I'm really impressed with so-and-so who might be a Black woman. Or I really was excited about the project that this person going through. Like, pay attention to the people who aren't like you and build them up and listen to them. I think everybody's marvelous. When I go into a classroom, I swear to love everybody. So for me, it's very easy to find out who's wonderful in the room. And some people just need a little extra verbalization of that. So your ability to like get to know folks, really understand them, and then talk them up to other folks will go a strangely long way. And I think being an ally is something that's it's undervalued, and we need desperately more allies because, you know, the bad jokes that guys will make when the woman's not in the room, you'll be in the room. And the rude comments people will make, you'll be in the room. And it's your chance to say, no, I don't really care so much for that. So that's a big one you can do. But I find the diversity inclusion efforts are never as strong as being willing to fire assholes for being an asshole, no matter how good they are, no matter how many sales they make, no matter how good their targets are. And guys like you and Dan and Brian saying, no, that wasn't actually a funny joke. So I think sometimes we all have to do our small thing, and change comes slowly, but I find that it's viral. I used to think when I first started out that I had to create this huge social nonprofit to make a difference. And then I found out that changing one life is very viral. If you can really change one life, they'll change people around them, and out and out and out. And I found that very true with my teaching. Like, here I am running into somebody who 5 years ago I helped her life. I didn't save her life, God knows. But I helped her change careers, and that feels pretty good. So like, you may not think it's enough, but it can really make a difference. And I wish I was an expert on diversity and inclusion, but I do know that being a real ally, which means when it's socially uncomfortable to say cut it out, you say cut it out. That's all I got. I wish I had more. Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, here you go.
I'm assuming, Dan, you know when we have to stop, when they'll kick us out. Good.
So it's pretty similar along the lines of like the diversity and inclusion topic. I think that I want to make the difference there because I am a Mexican woman trying to build a career here in Silicon Valley. And by doing that, I just went back to school to earn my data science degree. And I thought that at the beginning, I didn't want to be a victim of diversity and inclusion, but drive it with positivity. But every time that I try to do that, I see a lot of, I think that's when I see the diversity and inclusion issue coming up and what I mean is like when I try to influence by doing something instead of complaining, I see a lot of the people who are tired of listening to victims just lash back to you. And because the topic was creating norms and trying to include everyone today, I really like a few of the things that you were saying today. Like when we ask everyone to have a voice, we do it in ways that aren't really inclusive. And that's when people like with loud voices and things like that are always going to be the ones who take the voice, right? So right now I'm really struggling by influencing not being the victim and not being the person who complain. So speaking about the topic of influencing without authority, how do you recommend we take on this I don't know, like uphill battle of trying to influence by not complaining?
Well, if anybody wants to go deeper on these topics, I recommend that you sign up for what's called a T group. It's done by Stanford's interpersonal dynamics class. There's something called COM19 that you can take through continuing studies. It always sells out within 5 minutes of being listed because it's that good. Get yourself on the wait list. Somebody will drop out. That's how I got to do it, okay? Just because it's completely full, get on the wait list. I can almost guarantee you'll get in. And it's an extraordinary experience, and they'll talk a lot about honest, strong communication. It will change your life. It radically changed my life. I've done it twice. And I think what it does is it holds a mirror to you, so you can find out, do you sound like a victim? Maybe you think you don't, maybe you think you do. It doesn't matter. Like having that conversation, you'll start to understand what's more successful and less successful for you, no matter what you're trying to do. It helps you get over prejudices. It starts to reveal who you are as a person. Now, I know you don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be a victim. I'm a woman. I'm in my middle ages. I got like all kinds of nonsense coming up, but I just keep trying to just show up as best I can and listen to people. If you can get methodologies like the free listing brainstorming into the system, that will help. But often I find that if I can talk about things that aren't diversity-ish, like I love extrovert, introvert, because everybody thinks they're an introvert except Dan. So there's a few extroverts out there, but a lot of people like understand it and it touches them. So you can talk about things. We can talk about neurodiversity. Like everybody feels sad sometimes. A lot of people have seasonal affective disorder. Sometimes you can build a bridge between an experience one person has to your experience, but I'm not an expert in this space. And that's also another reason why I suggest COM19 and the interpersonal dynamics people. If you do a Google search for T-group Stanford, you'll find the listing of where you can take them. I swear to you, it will change your life for the better, period. And you will also meet amazing people who are working on problems like how do we talk about race, how do we talk about culture, how do we talk about gender, and that will also be invaluable. So if you really need more, I think I'm going to point you at that resource.